Nick Grimm. Well, in the 12 months following the tsunami, there's been fierce criticism of the Japanese government's handling of the disaster and of TEPCO, the company that operated the Fukushima nuclear plant. Well, for more, we're joined from our Adelaide Bureau by the Dean of International Studies at Flinders University, Professor Malcolm Cook. Professor Cook, thanks very much. This really, I guess you could say, is the largest crisis that Japan has had to face since the end of World War II. How has the government responded?
Especially the federal government or national governments come under a lot of criticism for both not giving out information in a timely manner and often giving out confused messages. The local governments, both within the disaster areas and across Japan, have fared better because many of them mobilized their own resources when they thought that the national government wasn't living up to the demands.
There's been criticism, as you mentioned, particularly of the national government, but more broadly about mainstream political parties and their failure to set aside their personal differences. There was talk at one stage of some sort of coalition government. Are we talking about a leadership deficit in Japan?
There was criticism of the national government for decades about a leadership deficit, and there was a change of power in 2010 that people hoped would bring a new political era to Japan. That didn't happen, and the tsunami and the fact that the leadership changed soon after that and there was no unity government deepened Japan's already deep alienation against its mainstream parties. At the moment, neither of the mainstream parties is very popular, and if there was an election in Japan, I think none of the above might win if that was on the ballot.
So is there a belief in Japan that there needs to be a radical overhaul of not only the political system but also the economy and its society in general?
Without a doubt, many people hope that this tsunami would have a silver lining, if you can call that would lead to a watershed moment and a significant change in the way the Japanese political system works, and in some ways the regulation of their major corporations like TEPCO. A year on, there's very little sign of either of those radical changes having been made. As I said again, deepening what was already a deep sense of alienation among the population against mainstream Japanese politics and in some senses business.
Well, I mean, you mentioned TEPCO. Obviously there is deep distrust, certainly as far as TEPCO is concerned, but more broadly with Japanese corporations and perhaps the feeling that they're the ones that are actually running the country.
Yeah, TEPCO is a particularly powerful actor that clearly wasn't effectively regulated, and in many ways probably regulated the regulators more than they're regulated by it. And now has this year lost over $7 billion, and its financial future is very cloudy, even though it provides power to over 50 million of Japanese people.
The economy is struggling, certainly struggled even more after this. We've been struggling for the last 10 or 20 years. Projections for Japanese growth are now down from 2.3% to 1.7%. That's as far as the IMF is concerned. How are they going to change the course as far as the economy is concerned? I notice the Prime Minister is perhaps talking about increasing consumption tax from 5 to 10%. How's that going to go across?
Well, the last time they increased the consumption tax way back in 1993, it led to a loss of government, so there's a political message there. But the biggest issue is probably Japan's fiscal deficit and debt. It has a debt over 200% of GDP, the world's third largest GDP, and that's scheduled to rise to over 230%. So there needs to be tax reform, including increased taxes. But when you have a weak economy and a people believing that the government isn't delivering, getting agreement on tax reform is very challenging. So Prime Minister Noda is brave, but maybe foolhardy as well.
Professor Malcolm Cook, thanks very much.
Thank you.